if you were offered that you could become invisible at your leisure, what would you use it for?
Well, that's an old test. If you could have one of these two powers, which would you choose? And one of them was flight, super strength, invisibility. Supposedly, if you said flight, you were more adventurous and good-hearted. And if you chose invisibility, it just seems like if people can't see you, they can't hold you to account. And so you can do all manner of sinful things.
Cinematic fantastic.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today. Welcome back to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Your other host, William. We're both here.
Who can speak for himself.
He
doesn't mind.
If he'd like to speak for himself, he is perfectly welcome to. Tonight we're talking about the 1944 sequel to the Invisible Man series called The Invisible Man's Revenge. It's still in the Universal monster movie oeuvre. Is that even the way to say it? It's still in that series. We'll have to see what William's opinion is on it.
But you're right to call it an oeuvre because the Universal Monster Studios catalog is over with this film as well as House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula.
Is that your opinion of it, you think?
This is like the last film.
Yeah, we will see the Invisible Man, the actual Invisible Man, I think.
In the Abbott and Costello spin-offs.
Yeah, and I think that's either in the next...
Which I believe were Frankenstein, The
season,
Mummy...
maybe?
No, I believe it's this season. Though Invisible Man might be in the next season.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, yeah.
Meets Boris Karloff as Frankenstein.
No, there's one called Abbott and Costello Meet the Killer. And the killer is played by Boris Karloff. So they made up a character
but
just
not
to fight
Frankenstein. Him. That would be
Glenn
Strange.
Lestrange. Glenn Strange plays Frankenstein a lot going forward. I think in the house in the Monster Mash movies, the House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula.
Yeah, did I say Lestrange?
I don't know.
I meant to say Glenn Strange.
Glenn Strange. It's fine.
I will say I do often misspeak because it's just when the brain goes into the mouth, there is a disconnect often there.
Well, and when the brain is moving as fast as yours does, sometimes it kind of goes a little bit faster, and then the mouth has to catch up.
Neurotypical people can often be able to sync up the brain and speaking quite fine, but there are a lot of times, especially when I'm talking about like time frames, like when I say 4 o'clock, sometimes I say like 10 o'clock, probably due to the vowels and consonants being easier to jump to for my mouth than my brain and vice versa, what my brain actually means.
Right.
And so I hear myself saying 4 o'clock and I say 10 o'clock and I'm like, did I say 10 o'clock? Why did I say 10 o'clock?
As long as you know what time it is.
I'm just addressing it because the first episode of season 3, I said, let's just call it season 1, episode 1, instead of season 3, episode 1.
Well, they're doing that with the new Doctor Who season. They're calling it season 1 because it's a whole new thing. They're on Disney Plus now, so
all right.
It's a full reboot. They didn't want to say...
This isn't a full reboot. It's how I work as a person that I struggle with speech, and that is a completely fine thing.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine.
Anyways, let's get into some into logical exploration of the psyche of the Invisible Man wanting revenge.
Right.
Which, what do you think about that? Let's start off.
Well, let's put it this way. the Invisible Man character was kind of pretty much a villain in most all ways in the first movie, the 1933 James Whale movie. The sequel to that, you kind of felt for him and went, okay, he's trying to. These other guys are way worse than him, right? They're really bad. So he's trying to clear his name, and he's trying to stop some really bad people. He may do some, some might consider despicable things. Some, if I remember that movie right, I think he was mostly did all right.
Yeah, the interesting thing in this movie is we have a natural man who, we have both parties are a little bit off their rocker because this dude,
I don't think
has done some things that are like a little bit suspicious or not. People
he's
don't
killed.
normally do these things.
He's a murderer.
Murder, forcefully taking someone's daughter and land away from them, or attempting to.
To me, the only people that come out clean in this would be Julie Herrick, played by Evelyn Ankers, and the boyfriend Foster.
Just because they get to stay together instead of him
taking. Look, Mark
Julie.
Foster doesn't do anything. We'll talk about this when we talk about the plot, but he doesn't do anything overtly evil, and neither does Julie. But there's some things you could be like, well, the Herricks, the
Herricks,
Jasper and Irene
drugged him and basically sent him to throw himself in a river, basically.
And not just that, they were like, well, we don't.
Though they could have killed him, they didn't though.
Yeah, so they're not as evil, but you're like, I don't.
And at the same time, at the end of the movie, was when the Invisible Man truly turned insane, and he is trying to drain people's blood so that he can stay the Invisible Man.
That's messed up.
When he dies, they're like, all's well that ends well for the Herricks. So they're trying to go the Herricks are the good side. None of them are really the good side.
No, they're not. And even, I mean, I guess you could kind of forgive Herbert or whatever, the cobbler guy. He's kind of the comic relief of this movie, and it has this much comic relief, and the rest of the movie, I'm telling you, is deadly serious. It's talking about murder and it's threatening people, blackmail, but it's like little bit of I think it's an attempt at humor. I was kind of over it. I was kind of like, okay, this scene's gone on way too long. So if you don't know, there's a scene. There's a character named Herbert. We'll get to him, played by Leon Errol, I guess is how you say his name. And he is supposed to be, he's a comedian, right? The actor. So they're going to use him in some kind of, comical kind of way. And he seems out of place in this because they're like, well, we got to have something funny, to kind of diffuse the tension. And I get that, but it seems a little out of place. That's my opinion.
The big thing with this movie is that they did not have enough material to fill 75 minutes. They straight up did not.
They fill it,
but the premise of the movie is the Invisible Man. There is a dude who wants revenge really badly, who through some coincidence or miracle finds a science fiction-y solution for his issue, and then he goes to town. And that's really it.
Pretty much. But here's the thing. You can tell a lot about somebody by the way they go about doing it. Okay, so instead of just going, okay, you guys wronged me, the Herricks, Sir Jasper and Lady Irene Herrick. These characters, we are told, we don't see any kind of backstory. It's all told to us. Like, oh yes, you remember that long ago when we were in Africa with the diamond mines and so. Oh, yes, as you well know, it's just a lot of it.
The reason for revenge is not in the movie.
No, it's not in the movie. It's just talked about. So you kind of have to go, okay, I guess I take their word over his or his word over theirs.
Yeah, we talked about
who do I believe?
In the Son of Dracula, episode, I talked about how oftentimes they like write stuff into the story that are interesting, but they don't take it anywhere. So
No, it's just
why
it's
include
just
it?
reason. It honestly, it's just a story reason. It's an overly complicated story reason to have this guy want to get these other people and eventually murder them or something, murder somebody. But this guy is a
would
jerk.
have loved to have seen.
Invisible Man's a jerk in this.
I would have loved to have seen. Hear me out.
Okay, we'll do.
They put the Africa scene at the beginning of the movie,
It's something.
where they are at Africa at the diamond mine, and they have this conflict where a guy nearly becomes dead or whatever it was. Just honestly would be a great thing. The sort of like a Last Crusade sort of beginning to the movie. Remember Last Crusade? He was like a kid in the canyon.
Yeah, it looked like a cold open.
Yeah, another example. It's a story called A Way Out, and it is a story about there are two characters who are prisoners. They're in a prison, and it's Vincent and Leo are both of their names.
Okay.
They break out of prison. They both have some beef with a guy named Harvey, who I believe Vincent's deal was that he dealt him a diamond, but it didn't end up going well, and it got pinned on his brother pinned everything on him, when it was like his brother that was like the one that was not the great doing the great stuff.
I think this is a game, right? I've seen some gameplay of this. Go ahead.
For brevity's sake, they both have beef against this guy.
Yeah.
They break out of prison, and there are just a ton of policemen after them. They are at large.
Right, on the run. Yeah,
they're
for most
on
of the
the
game.
run.
Yeah.
They do meet up with like their family, and there is like the story is not perfect, however, because there's like this one Vincent's child discovers in the newspaper that he's a fugitive at large, and he goes, "My dad, you've been lying to me," because he thought he was helping out his uncle in Italy, I believe was the cover story, and then he discovers that he, of course, is a prisoner, and then he's like, "I don't like you anymore," but he warms up to him after 2 seconds. That was like one thing that should have probably been changed.
It was a swerve. He's like, "I don't like you." Okay, you're fine.
Yeah, he
It
just
was too
like
quick.
he goes cries in a treehouse for like 2 minutes, and then he finally goes like, "You're my dad. You're back now." But they
no development. No time spent.
Leo. There's like a whole thing with his wife is having a baby, and so that I think that was have to do with some of the beef. But they were like the both of them had to tell their wives that they have to go do this thing with Harvey. Harvey is in Mexico, and he is living it up, literally like a Scarface parody, because he's wearing white, and he's in this mansion down in Mexico. And so they go on airplane to raid it, and then they go back with the diamond. Spoiler alert! Just hammer the 10-second button a little bit. Leo is a CIA agent. It was all a sting operation.
The ultimate in betrayal.
Yeah, when they were dealing the diamond, it was a sting operation. He was posing as a prisoner in order to capture Vincent, and so he ends up killing him at the end.
So do you think that's
because they fight for betrayal? But
so what do you think about that? Does that story? Does that story just kind of ring better?
I think that's something.
What do you mean by bringing that up?
I mean, the part where they go to Mexico and they have a whole thing with a diamond and betrayal and all sorts of stuff.
Right.
Would have been a great thing to start out this movie with.
Oh, you mean
there are many directions you could like.
Okay.
The high stakes, chase, and there's some beef going on. Just establishing a nice bed. You could do anything with it. Like a lot of action, a lot of intrigue.
I have
drama.
a movie. I have a movie. Hear me out. I have a movie.
It's a great
that
story that I feel like beginning the movie with something similar to that? Well, they don't have to have the whole
I have
thing with them in prison.
I have an example of that.
Sure.
We did a movie, and when I start telling you about this movie, if anybody's listened to our podcast, I think it may have been in season 2. When I start telling you about this, you're going to be like, oh, we did a movie in which there was a mission to go get a mineral in Africa.
Are you talking about the invisible ray?
Yes. And all the pieces were laid out of reasons why somebody would want revenge. Dr. Rook comes back. I know there's some other things that happen in the meantime, with the whole invisible ray itself. But something happens, but he, instead of becoming invisible, he becomes hypervisible. He's glowing. So it's kind of the opposite. And that, of course, gives him his power to kill. And revenge he does. He actually goes down, and each person who has wronged him, he kills. I think
and
that
that's a better
ways
invisible revenge story.
Yeah, but that one was superior. I mean, if not just because it's got two of...
Merely because they set it up and everything.
Yeah, and it's got...
I'm like, they could have literally had them
Titans.
start out in a mansion.
Yeah.
They're flying to Africa for grand glory, know?
Just, kind of speed it
They
up.
go there and then they have some beef. Maybe he is listening in on some conversation and he
Right.
goes like, "What are you guys talking about? You're going to do this thing? I thought we were friends. I didn't know you were X or doing X." And then they have like some chase.
And then he gets knocked out. Like
they have some action, and then the backstory happens, and then flash forward to they're back in the mansion, and then begin the Invisible Man's revenge.
I'm wondering if the reason why they don't do those kind of things as much as they did earlier is that these movies are making less and less and less. And they just don't have the budget. The budget, yes, but they probably find it's easier just to say something happened or just, talk about a past wrong. Because it's a lot easier to write something than it is to actually show it. You have to get all, but Invisible Ray did it. And it was about, except...
this didn't even need to be that long. Like, at this point with...
No.
The amount of material that they have available in the story, I would say it's 45 minutes at most. So just 15-minute begin the story in Africa.
Just like a cold open.
There's a start to something
it.
happening. Some intrigue they just betrayed when they wouldn't have ordinarily, and then they have like some high stakes chase or conflict gunfight like they did in A Way Out.
Right.
Would just round out the movie so much better.
So I think that our opinion of this, so you're probably seeing what our opinion is of this movie.
Story's not great.
Could have been better. Story's not great. Could have been better. It definitely had some downsides too. I think that, John...
the thing with... you're about to go into John Carradine and his story.
I was going to say John Hall... we've seen him before. He played Frank Griffin, who actually was connected to Jack Griffin. They actually said that it was a formula that was, that was your grandfather's formula or something like that. They actually connected it to the Griffins. He played a hero in that. If you remember, The Invisible Agent was actually really, really good, I think. I thought it was. It was fun. John Hall got to
just
actually
like this
do some
movie,
acting.
Pretty good premise, pretty good ending.
But like this movie that
this movie not
just
connected
watched.
at all,
right?
Except by name.
Yeah, except in name only. Now, John Fulton is doing the special effects, just like he did
hold
for
on.
Invisible Woman.
Yeah,
and Invisible
but hold
Agent.
on.
Right.
On the previous front, Invisible Man, like the whole thing with like his conquest of the village, the town,
Yes.
and like the whole chase scene. The original film had so much like material there with that isn't in this movie, sort of thing.
Yeah. There really
However,
isn't,
I
there
feel
isn't
like
a
in
chase. There
terms
isn't
of
a
a scary Invisible Man, we've been missing since the original film. And this is some aspect of this film that is the one thing that makes it match up with the original. Which, if you guys do not know, from when we were doing episode 20, I said the Invisible Man was one of the first science fiction stories and the first Universal monster movie that I saw. This story to me is just it is so great. All the things that they did with it. I mean, sure, it always could have been a little bit better with everything that is made. It can be like, maybe this going a bit long, maybe this going a bit too short. But that was just mastercraft. Like the original book, the original movie, to a lesser extent, it did not hold up to the book. It does not hold up to the book.
That happens
but
often.
It's still great. This movie, the insanity of an Invisible Man,
right?
And the sort of premise of it is sort of going back to that first movie, and so almost on a same level.
Almost, but now here's my question: didn't they say that the monocaine or the kind of the formula or serum that he took, that Jack Griffin took in the original Invisible Man, didn't that kind of bring out some of those insane kind of qualities? Like they kind of said,
the one thing with having the Invisible Man power is that it drives you insane, whether by separation from society in terms of your ideology, as well as still physically and metaphysically. You're an invisible human. You're not like any other human. You have to live differently than any other human.
You feel like you can get away with anything. You can get away with evil.
Yeah, you can basically do anything. And there's a lot of things you can't do at the same time. It's a hard thing to accept, And sort of same with this situation. Although, again, he was still not in his right head. He was still sort of a murdery guy. He just has a new weapon with this. The one thing this movie did was having to keep up the Invisible Man power by drawing human blood from people.
It reminds me of The Ape, where the doctor in that is siphoning off people's spinal fluid or whatever to
and so
for
now,
his research.
Now he's got this vampiric quality to him where he has to feast upon people and stuff.
Yeah, it's more scientific though. He's hooking him up to a syringe and some tubes, whereas Bela Lugosi would just go
the
straight
guy
for the neck.
At the end of the movie, even the guy who helped him, he has to get his blood because he doesn't have any other.
Yeah, and then he's like, well, I got to get the boyfriend out of the way, so let's take his blood,
and that's a little bit spooky. But thinking about the
he's
internal
very selfish. He's a very
monologue
selfish guy.
that not only that, but if you were in this situation, how would you what would you be like in this situation where you have to resort to this thing, you have to there's no way out of it. It's sort of just hanging your mind to I have to do this thing in order to stay alive or like this.
Yeah, I don't, honestly, he's not doing it to stay alive.
He's
just doing
brought
it
to the brink of your humanity.
He's doing it to
Although
stay
again, he's doing
visible.
he's doing it on purpose, but there's just something about that idea that speaks to me. Though they didn't do I don't want to be an Invisible Man, but I have to be Invisible Man.
Yeah. He just
so much as he wants to be an Invisible Man.
He went invisible, and we'll talk about this during the plot part, but he went invisible just so Jasper Herrick would be okay with him inheriting the house and Julie somehow. That's the part that gets me, is they keep saying that Julie is just another object to be. She's not a person with I don't like you. She never.
Yeah, she
really
doesn't
liked
do
him
much
that
in this
way.
film. She's played by Evelyn Ankers, and this is actually her last Universal role.
Wow.
This is her last Universal role ever.
Doesn't she? She does retire very soon after this to.
She retires in 1950 to focus on her family.
Yeah, she gets married with a guy, an actor who we'll actually see in.
But before
in
1952,
Creature from the Black Lagoon and the Black Scorpion. If we get to those, you'll see him again.
yeah, but between this and 1952, that range, there was no science fiction. There was just like, some sort of dramas and stuff. I don't know what you call the Black Scorpion though. That's not sci-fi at all though.
No, it is. It's about a giant scorpion.
Well, then it's a monster movie.
It's sci-fi.
It depends. So, drawing back into that, you're about to say the due to the special effects. We've seen it before, right?
Yeah, Fulton. He was in The Invisible Woman, and
did he do the invisible effects for the whole series?
Not for the whole series. I don't think so. I'm not sure. I don't know if he did Invisible Man Returns, but
the name is familiar to me. So
I know
I'm pretty sure.
know he did. I know he did the effects for Invisible Agent, and Invisible Woman, and Invisible Man Returns,
which were a lot of those effects were pretty immaculate. To be honest,
and honestly, if you were to think of some bright spots to this movie, it would that you see throughout the whole movie. That would be John Fulton's special effects. I mean, we see a lot of
they were
like,
as
fluid.
ship-shape as ever. Yeah, like the water and the powder, revealing the face.
We saw some of that. We saw some of that in Invisible Agent, where the wiping the makeup on the face. I think that this is just the next evolution of that,
where it was just like you could put like water on there, and it would like. How does it do that if Do you know, like, those, the people, the stage hands who are all covered in black? Like, I think I've tried to do research on what they're called, but people call them just stage blacks or tech blacks, which is a weird calling people blacks. But
yeah, it is. But they wear all black so they can move over the velvet background. Yeah, not be seen. Yeah,
he would probably be entirely in that. How does cloth and water work though? Because it's not really something that like. It looks like wet cloth.
Yeah, how did they make the water?
They likely probably would have had to have used other colors and stuff.
Yeah, it's highly likely. Okay, to answer your question, let's see. Invisible Agent, he was nominated. Invisible Woman nominated.
For Oscars.
Yeah, for Academy Award for Special Photographic Effects is what they called this. Photographic. They didn't say special effects. They called it Special Photographic Effects. He won an Academy Award for a couple other movies, but The Ten Commandments in 1956. He won he deserved that one because there were some really nifty effects in that movie. So, like the parting of the Red Sea and all that. Yeah.
The one little thing about the effects, however, is the one caveat is that they are held together with duct tape. Like, I will cite one particular place that I was like, oh, I see the folds unfolding, is when there was a transition and you could see his eyes reappear. Like, the circles around his eyes.
Yeah.
Just reappears because he takes off his goggles and stuff and there's nothing behind it. And then the transition appears and then immediately you can see his eyes and skin and stuff. And, like, the side of his nose.
For, like, half a moment. There's a couple times when you can see...
Half a second.
Yeah. You can see the outline of his head, like, when on certain scenes when he's moving over the background, you can see the outline of his head.
Yeah, I noted where he was about to put powder on his face, you could see just the shimmering line.
Yeah, even before he put the stuff on, right? But it's still good for the time. I thought it was pretty good. I'm very forgiving of that for older movies.
Yeah. The third thing is that there is a lot of use of strings in this movie. Where they do not, like the first Invisible Man goes on his revenge thing, they use a lot of strings whenever he's like pulling on something. Strings. And particularly in this last scene, it makes quite a lot of use of that, and it's very obvious. They did not hide it well.
No, not really.
Yeah, there was like a paper when he was like trying to write the will and testament of the house, the charters. The will and testament of the house is dying. Anyways, it was pulling the paper, and that's put on a string. And they
You see
did a
it
lot
for
of
half
strings toward
quickly.
the end for like he's pushing over a table, he's lifting the scientist onto the table.
Right.
He's I believe he like pushes over some sort of cobble brick, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a couple of there's a part where he pushes a statue or something like that off of a balcony, trying to kill Mark Foster.
Yeah. I thought
And
it was.
it's
I
not
thought it was
per-
just a piece of brick.
It's not perfect, but I mean, special effects get better and better, as we go.
Yeah, I do believe they green screened that fall though as well.
Oh, they did.
So
Oh,
that
they
might have
did,
been
yeah.
something different. But like that one, they did green screen it. So it's just like cheesy word. But I don't know
Right.
if they use strings for that one. But like, particularly toward like the end, wherever the Invisible Man is not visible for the most of the whole scene, and it's
So-
just like it's
so what do you
held
think
together
about-
with duct tape?
What do you think
It's
about another good thing about this
shoddy.
movie? Another good thing about this movie, and he's in it for relatively little bit amount of time, but John Carradine does a really good job in this.
Yeah, he was in 11 films that year.
Yeah. Do you
Which
know
was
do you
a
know, do you know why he did
of
so many
movies.
movies?
Money, probably.
Well, yeah. What he
He
was
got
trying-
in a lot of movies for Shakespearean theater.
he was starting his own Shakespearean theater, and he needed some startup money to get that going. So he
Probably because it wasn't quite an original idea. And plus, why not have a theater for more general things? What if you
no,
wanted to do a
because
Greek
look,
tragedy?
he was that was his specialty was Shakespeare, and he really loved it. So
But
hey,
the thing is, he
do
was...
do your dream. That's what I say. Do your dream.
Yeah, just like we're doing here with this podcast. Hey, maybe drop... maybe subscribe or follow to this podcast so that you can see the next episode where we do House of Frankenstein and stuff. 'Cause
Yes.
that's
You get to see
one of the
John.
last-
You get to see John Carradine
you get to
a
see John
couple more
Carradine.
times.
You get to see all the monsters interact for the last time. It's I
For
wonder
the
how
last
they're gonna
couple
do it.
times until Abbott and Costello.
It's one of the best things you can do. Subscribe or follow if you're on a podcast platform.
Another one, and we get to see him in another movie coming up this season. We're doing a doubleheader of The Ape Man and Return of the Ape Man.
And he's in Return of the Ape Man, which
He's in Return of the Ape Man, and these are
not
not
a great
the-
film.
Well, these movies are not related whatsoever. The thing that relates them is they have the word Ape Man in the title, and they both have Bela Lugosi in them. And they're both I think monogram pictures, and we know
It's reportedly
Anything-
not
yeah.
a great film. And,
anything from monogram with the word ape in it. If our experience in the past with that Boris Karloff movie, The Ape, if it's anything, I don't think we'll ever reach that level of insanity. But I think that, we're probably going to have an interesting time with that one. With both those.
just wait for Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Oh man,
Just wait.
you've never seen that, so you don't even know what you're getting into. Yeah,
There's a song, "Stand By Me." Won't you stand by me? Yeah, or something like that.
Yes,
I don't remember.
It's Ben King.
John Carradine, because probably in part to this, was in 351 credited roles, making him a prolific actor.
Very.
Which is one of the new definitions I've learned. Prolific does not mean that they were a great actor. It just means that they were in a lot of movies. So that was a big changer, because I was like, oh, prolific actors. We were talking about in Son of Dracula. Is it Adam Sandler? Is it Iron Man dude? Whatever. Why is my brain lacking?
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. But prolific actors would more likely be people like Tom Cruise, who were just in a lot of films over the course of their career.
I honestly I could say Nicolas Cage has been, because a lot of people that do direct to DVD or direct to streaming movies, they could turn
It's
out
just being
3
in
or 4
a lot
movies
of
a year.
films. And a lot
There's
of
a
times
lot of
people who
actors
want
that do
a
like
lot of
3 or 4
money do
movies a
that, yeah.
year. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people who do that. John Carradine, because he was trying to fund his company. Nicolas Cage, because he was in an alcohol bout.
Oh no,
or drugs or whatever.
Nicholas Cage overspent on things.
Yeah, he was
He bought a octopus just to study its and get lessons in acting from the octopus.
not to eat it.
He bought a T-Rex skull from Mongolia, but he had to return it because you can't sell things like that on the open market, and he didn't know that. Yeah, that's awesome.
John Carradine also played Dracula a lot, because there's Billy the Kid versus Dracula and Nocturna, granddaughter of Dracula. And
I have those. I have those somewhere if you're curious about seeing those. The 1950s are just chock-a-block with all kinds of horror and sci-fi. It may not be Universal stuff, but I think that either the equipment to make these movies got cheaper or something, because there's an explosion of movies from the 50s on, but mainly the 50s were just...
What movie did you see John Carradine in your childhood? Like, later on from, like, the 70s and 80s and 90s type thing. What is your experience with him?
I think I saw him in one of the House movies. He played Dracula in it was either House of Frankenstein or House of Dracula, and I saw him in that one time, and I saw him in another movie where he was when he was older, and I can't remember what title it was, but he has a very specific look. He's very thin.
Yeah, he's one of those people called character actors, who are people who just are devoted to their craft. They play eccentric people. Yes. Particularly.
And he did.
And in this case, it's a scientist, and he's rock solid on that role, probably.
Yeah, he did a good job. But honestly, the scientist role is really just a plot device to get us to make this guy invisible. Yeah. He's not related to the Griffins. He's just called Robert Griffin. Of course, when John Hall was in The Invisible Agent, he played Frank Raymond, but we all know that he was related to the Griffins, so that actually was more of a Griffin than this guy is. Yeah. But they just thought, it's the Invisible Man. We need a Griffin. Is he related to him at all? No, but people are going to expect him to be a Griffin. So. But
continuing on the John Carradine train.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be funny with this next one, Stagecoach. He was in Stagecoach.
He was in Stagecoach. He was in a lot of stuff.
He was Hatfield, who was the gambler. He's like one of the party members on their on their trails. The Grapes of Wrath, Preacher Casey. I did not look up how his involvement in the story, but
Henry Fonda was in The Grapes of Wrath. Henry Fonda is a great actor. He's fantastic.
Because of a lot of like the farm aesthetic, I guess, with the film, and the town aesthetic, that a preacher is definitely very important within like
it's the Great Depression. Everyone's poor and everybody's just trying to make it.
If there's like a bout between protagonist and antagonist, the preacher will be there.
Yeah.
He was in the 10 Commandments as Aaron.
Oh, that's right. That's who I saw him in that too. I watched 10 Commandments when I was a kid a lot. Yeah, that's right. I remember his voice. Even if he covers up his face with a beard and all that, that voice is very, very recognizable.
Yeah,
same thing with Charlton Heston.
Historically, Aaron being the voice of Moses, because Moses could not speak for himself.
Right on. Or he said that he was either nervous.
Have a lovely voice.
Well, a lovely voice. Well, supposedly Moses maybe had trouble with speaking. With his tongue. Some people said he stuttered. I don't know. For whatever reason, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. His voice was Aaron's voice was part of his skill, and so why not have John Carradine be the voice?
Yeah, why not have John Carradine to convince the Pharaoh to let his people go?
Yes, I can't do a Carradine impression, but yeah.
The Monsters. He was in The Monsters. I did not track what role it was, but I think it was like a Mr. Whatever.
Well, if you like the Universal Monsters, William, you'd like the Monsters, because
I like the Universal Monsters.
Yeah, because Herman Munster is basically the Frankenstein's monster. His wife,
one of my favorite characters of season 1.
Yeah.
I just realized I meant season 1 of this podcast where we talked about the vampire bat with Dwight Frye's character Herman.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I have not seen the Munsters. Would like to.
Yeah, you would like it. It's kind of goofy though, so strap in.
Potential thing on YouTube that we do incoming for Munsters. Potential.
Possibly, yes. So
I would have to see how long it is.
But do you have anything
The
to say
Secret
about
of
the
Nim.
other actors, or no? Or are you we're still on the Carradine train?
Yeah, Carradine train. Secret of Nim. Don
Yes.
Bluth's first animated movie. He was
Yes.
the owl in that movie.
Oh, interesting.
Who they go to for advice.
Nice. Yeah, the animation of that movie is amazing.
He married the writer of Treasure of the Sierra Madre, Doris Grimshaw,
really.
reportedly. And we did that movie, and it was a stinking good movie.
Yep, is 100% on Rotten Tomatoes as far as I remember. Last I checked.
He, as well as with his father, played in two movies. The first one is a middle-ish era Roger Corman movie called The Good Guys and the Bad Guys that came out in 1969. By the way, rest in peace, Roger Corman. He died this week.
Yeah.
He died Sunday, May 9th. Sunday, May 9th of June 2024 at the ripe old age of 98.
Yep.
May he rest in peace, for he was a prevalent he was a prevalent director. I did not mention that, but what I would be saying for like just a great actor would be a prevalent actor. So I'd use prevalent instead of prolific, because prolific means wasn't a lot of movies. Prevalent means they're popular. They're great.
Yeah,
they're popular.
and the Carradine family they're almost all of them actors. You got David Carradine, aka Kwai Chang Caine, aka Kill Bill himself, Bill from Kill Bill.
That's funny.
Keith Carradine is another famous actor. Robert Carradine played Lewis. I think his name is Lewis. He's like the head nerd in Revenge of the Nerds. Martha Plimpton is an actress. I didn't know she was a Carradine. I remember her from a movie that I have planned for us to watch, either for the podcast or just for the heck of it. Is called Goonies. So she was in the Goonies. Yep.
Yeah, great film. Also had an octopus in it.
It
Maybe
did, but they cut it out. They cut it out.
Stole
Yeah.
the octopus from the movie
They cut the octopus part out though,
so that Nick Cage could have it.
so he could have it. It could teach him about. Teach me
Anyway.
about acting.
Yeah,
Learn how to act.
second film John Carradine was in with his father, Boxcar Bertha, which is a weird name. Maybe that was one of the Boxcar children, Boxcar Bertha.
I don't know.
Early Martin Scorsese.
Really?
Yeah, it came out in 1972. He started his career in the 70s
That's true.
with
That's true.
shorts and stuff, the short films. That was where he started. This was one of his early films.
Right. So what about some of the other actors and the director?
Did not get anything.
I know the writer is Bertram Milhauser.
What a name.
Yeah, and in the early 40s,
What a name.
He worked on a lot of the. He was the primary screenwriter on the Basil Rathbone. We talked about him the last time. The Basil Rathbone Sherlock Holmes movies. This is directed by Ford Beebe or Ford Beebe. I don't know how to pronounce his name.
I believe. I think it was called The Night Monster or something like that. That had Bela Lugosi in it. I think Ford Beebe directed that movie. And then that's where they got him in from the Frankenstein meets the Wolfman. That's how he got in there. He did that.
He worked a lot on serials. He worked on 2 Flash Gordon serials, which we're doing a Flash Gordon
Later
movie.
this season.
Yeah, B movies and things like that were kind of his stock in trade. We've talked about John Hall before.
Him being the invisible agent.
And he played a lot of parts. I think his dark hair and his dark eyes let him play a couple of Arabian characters.
Funnily enough, John Carradine was like some wise old mystic man, I believe, in an Aladdin anime dub.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. So he could use his voice, but still be. If he's too old to act, physically, you can still do your voice. So.
Yeah, which is it's sort of weird to think, like the overlap between American cinema and dubs of Japanese series.
Yeah.
In the 80s and 70s.
Right.
Which I have not explored at all. I think I might watch some videos about that because it's a little bit fascinating.
And we talked about Evelyn Ankers before. She was kind of the Fay Wray of her day, because if Fay Wray was like, doing lots of work up until King Kong, Evelyn Ankers,
she was doing a lot of work in Universal monster movies
for the
40s.
1940s. Yeah, for the 40s. She was like the scream queen of the 40s. If you were going to have a movie that had horror stuff in it, even if she played a bit part, an extra part, a little side role, she'd play something.
Yeah, but we only really saw her for like 4 or 5 years or so, though.
The Wolfman, Ghost of Frankenstein, Son of Dracula. She's also in The Mad Ghoul, Weird Woman.
So 3 years.
Invisible Man's Revenge. I don't think we're going to see her anymore, I think.
Yep, that's what I said. We don't see her anymore. No more Universal monster movies with Evelyn Ankers.
Yeah, and I don't know what to think about the guy who played Sir Jasper Herrick, but I know that the actress who played his wife was Gail Sondergaard. And all I know about her is she played parts like this, like older, not, I guess, middle to later age ladies who have some sort of evil plan or plot or something. I don't know. I don't know anything more than that about her, so I can't really speak to that. She was the Spider Woman in a Sherlock Holmes movie. She was kind of the go-to kind of evil woman kind of thing.
Huh. So I wonder if they did like any Spider-Woman specific movies, like the Hannibal Lecter of the 1940s.
No. I don't think so. She was mainly the Spider-Woman kind of movie was. They did a couple of those, but it was kind of like to be a big villain for Sherlock Holmes to fight. I think that's what that was.
It's a bit interesting to me. He started out in a book, and then he's in this own like sort of unrelated seeming sort of things, just because people liked the idea of the character of him.
Yeah,
and you wouldn't this does not ordinarily like happen. I don't think.
Well, all the movies were based off the books that he was in. And so there wasn't anything invented. I think there was maybe a prequel called Hannibal Rising, but
it was his own mythos. But like, it's so weird to see that people are like, oh, we like, or both him and these people are like, let's put him in a bunch of other things to sort of connect it to this throughput of, oh, it's this dude who wrote it or had a hand in it. I might have to look into that more. But I'm just like, why did they do that? How did that happen? Anyways, do you want to talk about the plot of the movie?
Yes. The movie starts on the docks of London. You see this shipping crate get a hole cut in it or a slit cut in it, and a guy gets out. Of course, we know after watching this is John Hall now with a mustache, because he didn't have a mustache in Invisible Agent. He got that mustache. He goes and buys himself some new clothes. He is paranoid about being spied on. He tries to avoid the police. So you're like, okay, he's nervous about being found out. He must have done something to deserve this. But after he leaves, and he leaves his old clothes there after buying the new clothes, the guy who sells clothes looks through and finds a newspaper clipping inside his coat. He escaped from a mental institution in Cape Town, South Africa. That doesn't sound too good. And his name is Robert Griffin. He killed 3 people, it looks like, some orderlies or whatever. Griffin is saying, don't worry about, the clothes. Where, I'm about to come into my own. You're like, okay, you're about to come into some money. So now we see a house we're going to see a lot of It's the Herrick estate, known as Shortlands. It's owned by Sir Jasper Herrick, played by Lester Matthews. I think we didn't mention him earlier. We didn't. And his wife, Lady Irene, played by Gail Sondergaard. And right now, they're talking with Evelyn Ankers, who plays their daughter Julie, and her new boyfriend Mark Foster. And they're kind of introduced to him, and they're going, well, it's not a bad match. So they leave, and as Julie and Mark Foster are leaving, Robert Griffin is sneaking up to the house. These are the two people that he's really there to meet.
And then it goes like, yo, you guys know me. I know you guys know me. I still want your daughter. Everything's cool. How's the weather?
That's the creepiest part of this is he's like, Julie, I remember her. I'm a deep thinker, you see, and I was always a deep one. It's like she's mine. She's supposed to be mine.
He's talking about it like an appointment for an auto repair. He's like, I've still got that appointment, right?
Right, exactly. Well, here's the thing. This is the reason why there is an Invisible Man's Revenge is they were all in Africa, and Robert Griffin, John Hall's character, he says that there's this big diamond field that he finds there, and supposedly it was a good find, but he like a log or something, or stick or something off a tree hits him, and he gets knocked out. And they think, oh, we were told you were dead, left for dead. Oh, we're sorry. And how is that even something anybody really does? And supposedly it gave him amnesia. He doesn't remember anything. So he ended up, working in Africa, and then he gets put in a mental institution. He gets out, but he's got documentation saying, whatever you find at this diamond deal, I get half. And
they stole it from him.
But and that's been 5 years ago. And he says, well, I get half. And they're like,
they
what?
did not establish it, but I bet they made the tree fall down. That would have been a great scene to have. They pushed down the tree.
Yeah, or it made it seem like they may have had something to do with it. Yeah,
and then that would have been interesting. They leave him for dead.
Yeah,
but he's not dead.
That would have made them really evil. This was 5 years ago. They come back.
Like, seriously, it writes itself.
Yeah.
All you have to do is do that. Make a tree, reuse it from like another scene, and then have it fall on him.
Right.
Like with green screen, fall on him.
And he gets hit on he forgot everything. Then he got hit on the head when he was working on the docks in Durban, South Africa, and suddenly his memory comes back to him. That's exactly how memory works. You get, in movies, you get knocked out, you forget something, and you get knocked out again, and it comes all back. It's almost like it's one of those old TVs that doesn't show the signal right. You have to bang it on the side to get it to work, or like a computer that you have to reboot. It's like, that's not how memory works.
Or like stereos, portable stereos that jammed.
Yeah, exactly. So they said there was an agreement. You have to do your agreement. And they said that, he said, I want it all. I don't care if this will ruin us. He goes, I don't care.
He wants your land and your daughter, all the things that you bought with money, except the daughter.
How is she
you
part of...
You can't buy a daughter with money.
How is she part of the deal? Again, treated like an object, right? So they... And I seriously think that she does drug him because they're like, oh, well, you'll get everything that's coming to you. And that's a famous line that everybody always says. They go, oh, you'll get what's coming to you. And that means yeah, I'm gonna go get some whiskey. It tasted a little smoky. I hope you don't mind that. It's like, yeah, that's because you put that, that powder in it that knocks people out.
It's like, hey, so you like ketamine.
Right. Yeah, I heard you like a little bit of ketamine in your coffee. Yeah, no. So he starts to...
They call it suburban coffee.
Oh, ooh. He starts to pass out.
It's like Irish, but better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a joke, by the way. Don't.
Yeah, don't do drugs, kids.
Okay. Ketamine, not more like ketanot mean, as in not yours.
I ketamine. You shouldn't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he passes out, and they send him out of the house. They take the written agreement from him, so he has no way of proving anything. And they just kick him out, and he wanders around. There is a cobbler named Herbert Higgins, played by Leon Errol, the comic actor. He's staggering home and sees Robert Griffin fall into the river, and he can't swim. He could probably just stand up and he'd be fine.
Yeah, the thing is, he wasn't like drowning. He had like swam or doggy paddled to the middle of the river to where he could say keep going, and then he swam himself to the other side.
Yeah, he's like doggy paddle. Just you can do it. Yeah, right.
It wasn't.
You saved his life.
It
Herbert.
wasn't that he
Good
couldn't
job.
swim at all and was drowning, and he had to jump in underwater to save him.
Yeah, and Herbert.
And that's what I was expecting.
Herbert helps him, saves him, and I think Herbert sees a golden ticket with Griffin, because they decide that I'll help you out. I'm as good as gold. I'll help you out. And he's going to go to blackmail the Herricks and kind of go, hey, if you'll settle out of court for this amount, everything will be okay. So. But Jasper Herrick, he goes, okay, that's nice. Okay. Oh, my friend's here, Sir Frederick Travers, who's a friend of the Herrick family, and he is a chief constable. And all of a sudden, Herbert gets really nervous, and he's like, oh, and Herbert had a lawyer there, to help him. But the lawyer, when he hears Frederick Travers, he's like, I'm out, and he leaves. So they're like, your claims are void, and Herrick says, oh, Robert Griffin, he's just a homeless guy that keeps wandering around. Oh, well, and Herbert says, I've never heard of the man in my whole life. Instantly betrayal. And he leaves out. And they said that Rob Griffin has to leave the jurisdiction. I guess that just means he just gets kicked out of Herbert's house or something, in the rain, and he's trying to find his way back to London. And who else does he come across but Dr. Peter Drury, played by John Carradine, his house. John Carradine's like one of the best things about this movie. He does a really good job. He's instantly believable.
He's solidly he's the only character who, well, they wrote so relatively little of him. Yeah. But he was fairly fleshed out. That his dialogue was the most natural.
Yeah, and also he explains. He doesn't explain, the invisibility serum exactly like the original Jack Griffin serum, but he gives kind of similar stuff like H.G. Wells would do, like talking about refraction, and if you could make a human being not reflect or reflect or refract light, then he would be invisible. And he's got an invisible parrot. He's got a little invisible dog somewhere, or some animal. But he's got the main character, though, that you see, the main animal is Brutus, his invisible dog. And I mean, Rob Griffin is just amazed by this. He's like, this is not real, And John Carradine has a line where he says, in this house, you have to believe what you can't see. And I was like, that's a good line.
Yeah, he has this dog that is literally just a dog leash because of the way it physically walks around. The head would be bonking into his leg.
Yes.
So, because it's a fairly big dog, it's definitely just like a floating harness.
Yeah, and actually that floating
later in the movie.
Yeah, if you go onto certain websites back in the day, I think at least in the 80s and 90s, they had invisible dog like harness. You basically, instead of it being a loose harness, it's actually a stick that goes down the the leash, and it makes it look like it, so you could actually make somebody think you have an invisible dog. It's a gag gift, and I'm sure you could find.
I believe the dog's name was Gray Shadow.
Oh, you mean for real?
Yeah, the real life name was Gray Shadow.
Okay, but he was Brutus in the movie.
Yeah.
So, and there's a line where he says, "Oh, Brutus, he was always picked on by the dogs of the richer folk, the gentry, and they always team up. They come in twos and team up on, and come after him, but nobody's gonna mess with him now." And Griffin's like, "Huh." Yeah, those rich dogs always do mess with you, huh? And they come in twos, right? I know how that is. And you're like, oh, I see what he's putting two and two together about what he's going to do to get his revenge. So he sees
He's
the point
like,
of
with
it.
this, the people who wronged me are gonna pay for the medical bill, because becoming the Invisible Man isn't cheap after all. You have to pay for the medical bill.
No, it isn't. It isn't. So what ends up happening? He goes, well, you need a live human being, right? Well, I'll volunteer. I'll do it. What have I got to lose? Drury,
Blood, obviously.
Well, Drury is like, sure. I'm going to have people banging my door down. From Paris and Vienna and all the different places. They're going to come and the scientists are going to come and check me out and see my amazing discovery. But it does work. And while Drury is making some notes, Griffin's like, I'm out. So he goes. He starts walking down the road. He doesn't even put on the famous, the bandages around his head yet. And you notice
one thing to ask you, which I don't think I haven't asked you at all, but if you were offered this deal that you could become invisible at your leisure via a scientist's, magic power, which, by the way, wouldn't he be, like, in newspapers and stuff? Because he's, like, doing these invisibility experiments, and he's like...
He wants to be in the newspapers.
In the news?
He's not right now, but he wants to be in the newspapers, but I think that when he gets his discovery down pat and tested, and shown to work, I think it does have a downside, which we'll discover.
Yeah, if you were offered this, that you could become invisible at your leisure, what would you use it for?
Well,
what would be day 1, day 2, day 3?
Well, that's an old test. Like that, they would say that there was two powers. They'd say, oh, if you could have one of these two powers, which would you choose? And one of them was flight. I think there was flight, super strength, and invisibility. And supposedly, if you said flight, it meant that you were more adventurous and good-hearted. And if you chose invisibility, it means that you had secret.
Yeah, but would you go?
I would spy on.
Help out someone at the White House. Go host your own stakeouts and sting operations or whatever.
You would have to catch. You would have to catch somebody doing something wrong. You'd have to catch them in a crime and stop the crime. I don't think. I think that honestly, would you just like?
Yeah, would you play pranks on people, even non-technical pranks?
I don't know. That's very revealing. Also, I think there's too much.
What would you do?
There's too much temptation in that. I don't know what I would do. Because when you.
What do you think it would help you do if you had that power?
There's too many bad things you could do with that. You could spy on people while they're putting in their ATM pin, and you could steal their money. It's like, I don't know of any really good things that you could do with invisibility if you were invisible all the time. It's just spying on people and
but
nobody could trust you.
Turn into the Matrix dude. You're just infinite power to stop evil.
I don't know. If you're invisible, I think it's just and also all somebody has to do is just dump some paint on you, and you're just completely visible. So it's got its
downsides. If you're hanging around a
downsides.
construction site trying to make sure that people don't fall, you'll get hit with paint.
Right, and so it is rather difficult to become visible again in this. I mean, you could temporarily put flour or water on your face or something like that, but to become visible, as your normal self, it turns out there's a downside, which we'll get to.
But would you just hide in the house if you were forcibly made invisible? Would you just hide in the house?
No,
or do you think you'd be invisible?
I would want to be cured. I would want to be cured from it.
But if you're invisible for a solid week, and it's only time that can cure you, what would you do?
I think that I would probably spy on on people and see what they're doing, and if they did something, evil or wrong.
Okay, so yeah, you admit it.
Well, you just
That's
said
a little bit hypocritical.
you just said you said you're invisible, what would you do? So, okay, nothing. No, I would use it. I would use it to spy on us on situations, and what else are you gonna do? I mean, just sit around the house all day, and wearing a bathrobe or something. You've got to make it useful. You've got to.
I guess you could go like see the sights, that you wouldn't ordinarily.
Well, there's a lot of people who are doing bad things behind closed doors, and if they knew that somebody could sneak in and hear what they were doing, and I would expose the evils that they were doing to the public. The things that people do in secret, they wouldn't be secret anymore. That's about the only good thing you could do with it. Everything else just seems kind of skeezy.
So it's just inherently not a great question. Okay, man. So he goes to the manor and he writes the will and testament of the house, I'll call it again.
Right, he forces him to sign over the estate, at least to him.
And then he goes up to the cobbler dude in the inn, right?
Well,
What's up with that?
He goes back to Herbert's house, and Herbert's like, I'm going to get kicked out of my house. I don't have any money for rent. And he goes, I got you on this. And he goes, let's go. And so basically you have a little extended scene, which feels very out of place. Like I said before, very out of place in this movie. And there's a whole thing with... He
wins a game of throwing darts.
And it's really long. And and it doesn't make any sense. Like, hey, I'm just going to put it on top of an accordion, and the wind of the accordion is going to make it go. You're like, yeah, okay.
And it obviously travels at like a static rate.
Very slow.
So like it's very obvious.
Yeah, to us it's very obvious. There's another movie that came out in the
you can't help but smile
60s or 70s. It actually stars Kurt Russell when he was with Disney for he had these series. It was The Computer Wore Tennis Shoes, Strongest Man in the World, and Now You See Him, Now You Don't. I saw Now You See Him, Now You Don't so many times. But basically, there's this formula that turns you invisible, and there's a part where they're playing a game of golf, and this young student has to play golf against this gangster, and he bets him all this money, and the character, the invisible guy, who is another student, played by Kurt Russell, he helps the golf ball go in the hole. So it reminded me of this movie. I was like, or vice versa. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, okay, this sounds like one of those kind of, isn't this funny?
Yeah,
I'm helping him win the game.
Though it is funny is that like literally just being invisible, like literally you can the only things you can really do is stay in your house, become a crime-solving superhero, or do hijinks like a comedy character.
Yep, tripping people or making darts go to a board. So
I'd love to see an invisible story that does like a fourth option among that.
There was a TV series called either Invisible or Invisible Man, where he used a formula that was like this liquid metal kind of mercury looking stuff called Quicksilver. You put it on your skin and it would go all over your entire skin, and you're invisible now. But the problem is Quicksilver would slowly poison you, or would poison you the more you use it. So the more times you use your invisibility power, you're hastening your own demise. So you have limited life. So I thought that was interesting. It was very, I think it was on Sci-Fi Channel. They reshowed it on Sci-Fi Channel years ago.
Anyway, at the bar, wouldn't there's so many people there that you just take 2 steps forward and then you bump into him.
Yeah, and wouldn't that feel strange? Because I think the guy's
there.
Yeah, it's a guy with no clothes on. You're like, oh hey, whoa, there's nobody there. So Jasper Herrick, the guy, father of Julie, Rob Griffin is saying, oh, you'd let me have Julie and Shortlands if I were visible again, right? And he goes, well, yeah, sure, fine. So he goes back to Drury's laboratory, and he sees that the doctor is able to, by the way, Brutus, the dog, was invisible the whole time, but he's able to bring Brutus back from invisibility to visibility by draining, which I don't understand. Can you just drain any old dog of their blood and transfuse it over, and it's going to work? Again, just go with it, right? So
Yeah, he's like, wait a minute, you can do that, make me not invisible.
Right, and he goes, well, make me visible too, like you did with Brutus. And he goes, I mean, with this, we just killed a dog. That's bad enough, but now we'd have to kill a man to do it. No, I can't do that at all. And so he goes, well, what about you? And so they have a little fight, and he knocks him out, and he starts he basically gets his blood and becomes visible again. But to cover up the crime, he sets Dr. Drury's house on fire. Of course, through the process of that, Brutus, who's visible now, he's visible for the rest of the movie. Just, it's cool. So the dog gets out of the house and is looking for Rob Griffin. There's a whole little subplot, I think, quickly, where they're trying to get Mark Foster to come over there because I think he wants to get his blood, but he settles for Drury's blood, I think, because he can't get Mark Foster over there. They call the police, and there's a whole little mix-up where they go, okay.
Oh, okay. This is one of the gripes that I had, is where they're making him take a phone call.
Yeah.
To make Foster go to meet him, so that he can take revenge on him, And instead he calls the police. But the thing is, when he declines the call, he's like, wait a minute. And then he gets back the call, and then he hears the people. He's like, you ratted out on me. You didn't call him when you were calling the hotel. But I'm like, they're basically, like, presumably from this conversation, hearing it out loud, this is a hotel receptionist. He's like calling someone to say,
no, it's
hey.
It's the police. It's the police.
Yeah, it's the police, but they're at the hotel, and it sounds like they're going like, hey, can you go get this dude because the Invisible Man wants to meet him? Like, that's what the cover is.
Right.
But it sounds like he's making a call to the receptionist, but he gets suspicious of this. And so he does the second call, and he's like, nope, I didn't call. So then he declines the police coming?
Yes.
Which I don't get.
He doesn't want he wanted Mark Foster. He doesn't want the police to come over there. So
but then they were like, hey, are you the guy who called? And he's like, no, I'm not the guy who called. And then they're like, okay, well, we're not coming. And then those are the two things. Number one is like, how is that presumably suspicious? If you're calling a hotel reception, you're not calling him directly, but you're calling like a receptionist or something.
It's the guy who
to go like, hey, can you go get this dude?
It's the police.
He lives in this hotel.
No.
The Invisible Man wants him.
No, it's the police, and Mark Foster.
Yeah, it's actually
the
police. But what the cover is not suspicious. But he gets suspicious of it.
Right.
When he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be suspicious of it, because it's like, why would you be? It sounds like he was just getting a hotel receptionist.
Right. So after this guy becomes visible, and Drury's house is burned to the ground, Mark Foster comes in and sees this happen, of course, because he's definitely suspicious of he's like, Drury's the guy who did experiments. We got to get over there right away.
Oh yeah, he gets the police though, which the police wouldn't have came if it weren't for him going to them directly after this phone call, and they go, hey, they were calling for you. Were people calling for me? Oh, people were actually calling for you.
That's
this Invisible Man
bit of a plot
bluff.
hole. Right,
and then they're like, oh, well, let's go after him. He's dead serious. Okay?
Right, so...
This little bit is very confusing to me.
Right, I agree.
I just wanted to say that. I'm sorry.
And Robert gets back over to Jasper Herrick again, and he's visible. And he wants to... He wants to meet up with everybody, and he says, well, my name's Martin Field. Call me Martin Field. Because nobody has seen him as Robert Griffin. They're just like going to have to call him Martin Field. He basically moves in with the Herricks, and at the estate. He's now the owner. And Herbert shows up there, and he tries to blackmail. He knows, a little bit about what Rob Griffin's up to. He tries to blackmail him, and he goes, "Well, you're not." It almost sounds like he's like, "Well, I need some more blood to stay visible, and you got blood, Herbert." But then you hear the dog howling outside, and Robert's like, "I'll give you 1,000 pounds to kill the dog," and Herbert's like, "It's as good as done." Now Robert, who is playing Martin Fields, is having a meeting with everybody. Julie's there. Mark Foster's there. Nobody knows anything different. And he starts giving it away because he's like, "Oh, this invisible man, what does he, what does he eat, drink? Dewdrops? What does he eat? Cobwebs? He doesn't eat meat like we're eating now. I'm definitely not the invisible man." Wink, 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 nudge, nudge. But then he goes, "Well, what if this invisible man, in order to become visible, needed someone else's blood? Well, then he would do a transfusion." It's like, well, you know a little bit too much about all this. So he's over there cutting some meat or something, and he sees his hands start fading away.
Becoming invisible again. This is one of the sections of this movie that was like, they haven't done this before. This is interesting. I could have done it better, though. Definitely.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it's like he's trying not to be the invisible, or posing as not the invisible man, but like he has to cover up for that despite becoming invisible again. Haven't had that in the series.
He runs off, and he leaves a note or tricks Mark Foster into coming down in the basement.
Where everything goes, "I'm gonna need your blood, Sonny."
Yeah, and he locks the door, and they start having a little fight, which I thought it was decent. It's a pretty good little fight. At that same time, Constable Frederick Travers is there with some, and he sees Herrick, and he's like, "Stop covering up for this guy. I know who he, you know who he is. Who is he? Let's go in." So they go in, and they go down to the basement to try to open it up. They bust in just a little bit, of course, with Herbert's help as well. Herbert is not trying to kill the dog anymore. I guess the dog got away from him. So Brutus, the dog, comes through, jumps through the hole in the door, and goes right to town on Rob Griffin and just starts tearing at him. And the dog kills him. Frederick Travers comes over, and he says the line, "We've nothing more to fear from the invisible man. He's dead." And everybody's like, "Okay." Well, wait, Mark Foster, who the invisible man, who Robert Griffin started doing the transfusion with, he didn't do it all the way. He got stopped in the middle. So Mark's going to be all right. Okay.
It's
lucky for
honestly
him.
a little bit of a weird end.
Yeah, and
because everything comes together in a way.
Then they're all upstairs. Julie and Mark and Herbert even, and the Herricks, and Frederick Travers. They're all just
and they're like, "Yay, we saved the day."
Well, and they kind of try to make you feel sorry for Rob Griffin, or try to make you sorry for the Herricks about what they put him through. Oh, the Herricks were...
Though neither of them are, like, good people.
Yeah, and it zooms into the fireplace while they're talking, which it made me think of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where they're talking about, the punishment for his sins, And the last lines of the movie are Frederick Travers. He says, "Warped by imaginary wrongs, a man fighting shadows. He's to be pitied, really. He probed too deeply in forbidden places. What a man earns, he gets. Nature has a strange way of paying him back in his own coin." It's like, wow, that's amazing.
Profound, but doesn't match the tone of the movie.
No, it doesn't. And then it fades out, and we get the credits. And we don't see
just like this
the
is an
Invisible
odd
Man
one
anymore.
Because it's both got a lot of good things, but it's still it's shoddy. They didn't like make it right, but
yeah,
it's pretty good.
I thought it was okay. I think the ways in which it could
I
have
did
been
have a
better.
thought though.
Yeah, go ahead.
about the police. Nowadays, emergency calls, you call the police to anything, they are treated very seriously, regardless of, like, how real the situation is, how insane the person might sound. Really, maybe they're like a hyperdesiac. They think they're sick with something and gonna die.
Yeah,
or something. They still send
this
people.
was prior to 911. When 911 came out, they were like,
yeah, 911. They still send people, regardless of how weird the situation is. Regardless of what words you say, you called for a reason.
Yeah,
that is their job, is to help whoever calls. Regardless, if nothing happened, they still go. They still dispatch immediately.
right,
Like,
and they don't hang up on you.
Police shouldn't be people who are like, I've got a meeting with the Invisible Man, and they're like, what, Invisible Man? Bosh.
Right, and then they hang up.
The
They hang up
Invisible
on
Man could be like a code name, like the Zodiac Killer. You know,
Right.
It could be like a code name. The Invisible Man. He strikes from the shadows. You know, you don't know.
Right,
You
we'll
still
be over
treat
in
it
we'll
seriously,
be over
though.
in just a minute or two, you know. And maybe you don't drive so
Police
fast.
aren't supposed to
getting
be
there.
stupid because that's their whole job. Even if it's like fake, they
it
still
wouldn't
go.
be a
if they're
Universal
called.
movie without the police being kind of stupid.
Yeah, that's the one thing though. Like
Yeah.
that whole little bit just bothers me in a way.
Yeah, and the police can't be really smart, or they just solve the problem and solve the issue, and we have no movie. So
Yeah, but otherwise, yeah, no skin on its bones, really. It's just the idea is great.
there will
ending,
be much better done Invisible Man movies in the future, but they're not called Invisible Man. They're they have the Invisible Man as a theme.
I'm
they
just
started
like, for a
think-
movie on its individual basis with
Yeah.
Invisible Man as a theme, as you've said, this movie, yeah, it executed its premise. It has a pretty good premise just by itself. Invisible Agent,
but the other
Yeah.
movies kind of leave it cold though,
Invisible Woman,
especially the first two.
yeah. Like, all three of these last movies, each in their individual right did something.
Yeah,
They just could have done it better.
yeah, but hey, one thing you can take about this is effects of invisible things are getting better and better and better. Green screen stuff. There may be they may hire people that don't do such a great job with it, and it kind of looks kind of obvious. But when you have the right kind of money behind it, you can do effects like
Yeah,
Fulton
I don't
did.
think we've had anything as good as these effects, really, in the modern era. But that is to say that there aren't very many Invisible Man movies in the modern era.
Oh, there's some really good Invisible Man movies in the modern era, and they
but nothing like no effects like just like these.
old school. Yeah,
No
I
one
like-
has replicated these yet.
I like some later on. I like a lot of good old school effects. So that was the Invisible Man's Revenge from
and the Invisible Man
1944.
series.
Yeah,
Man,
pretty much.
as I've said, I really care about, the book and the movie were my childhood. The first movie and the first book were just one of my first forays into this genre. And it's just, I'm glad to see that it went out on a higher note than it would have been with, Invisible Agent and such.
Yeah. Plus, Invisible Agent was more of a military spy thriller
Like,
to
the
me.
1940s were a lot drier in terms of, development, because with 1930s we were talking about all the new developments with cinematography and all the new sound. Man, sound was invented. And then 1940s, there wasn't very much innovation, as much as they were just making solid movie after pretty solid movie.
Special effects, I think, were part of the innovations
Just
going forward.
little innovations, as they come, better and better, little by little. The title sequences have been getting better and better. We've been starting to get like unique, special ones. I don't remember the one this had though.
I think this one just had, like pouring liquid into a vial and the smoke came out and wrote the letters?
No, that was the last movie he did.
Oh, okay. Well, then this
Told
one.
you didn't remember it.
Yeah.
I didn't remember it.
Yeah, I didn't remember. But
Should you see this movie? Should you watch it?
Yeah, it's watchable, especially for the special effects. That's my opinion. But okay, the next movie that we're going to talk about is
House of Frankenstein.
House of Frankenstein. It's part of the
Excited.
Those Monster Mash movies.
Excited.
Well, we get to see, strangely enough, we get to see Boris Karloff in a movie where he's not Frankenstein. So there you go, and we'll see John Carradine again. We'll see Lon Chaney Jr. again. So we'll see all these monsters on the same screen at certain times. So, were they done really well? You'll have to see. So I'm curious to see what you're going to think.
Thanks for listening to Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. Click here and here for some more excellent content. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon.